Hey, good afternoon everybody, and welcome back to the channel. And I'm taking a quick stroll around the property this morning, noticing how the jungle is outpacing my yard work right now. It's been kind of wet lately. Solar's doing good, but boy, this time of year things are growing super fast. And I wanted to talk to you guys about some considerations for buying raw land that you'd want to take into account if you're deciding to go off-grid, live on solar, be a little more self-sufficient. So yeah, we're going to take a peek at some land around here, and I'll show you some of the things around this piece of property that you really do need to think about, regardless of where you are thinking about purchasing some raw land. Pretty gray day, intermittent showers. Jacking the beanstalk out here lately. Every time I walk through here, showing me what I need to do. A little behind on the yard work, but as you can see, everything's pretty saturated right now, but this stuff's growing fast. So right here is my house, and the homes out here typically are on post and pier, to where you have good air circulation going underneath the home. You know, I've got the whole place, you know, at least a foot above ground everywhere. And typical post and pier construction. That way, when we do get flooding rains, the house never gets flooded. And where the house sits compared to like where I'm about to stand right here. Hey, what are you doing out there? Huh? You know, I've dropped in elevation now a good couple of feet from there. You know, at least 2, maybe 3 feet I've come down, which is good. So when I'm getting torrential downpours, and I'm talking like 3 inches an hour, and it can do that round the clock at times out here, you know, that water's always peeling away from my structure in all directions. You know, just a slight grade going downhill in all directions around the property. And then of course, you know, the post and pier helps you be up above that. So, and then I'll show you what it's like when we get just a little more downhill from there. And there's just not a huge difference in elevation anywhere on this property. A few feet either way is all I get. What are you guys doing? So where the chickens are starting to run now, you'll see they'll go down a little bit. And I'm going to try and show you. This is a very important thing. So right down in there, this, and I was hoping to get the chickens in there, but they're starting to walk away from me, wondering what I'm up to. This will run like a river, because all the rain from uphill on this island is, you know, when it's pouring, it's all going down to the ocean one way or the other. And I have seen this right here, right down in there, which is a trench, literally a trench that the water has carved out through the lava. And when it's racing through there, it can be 3 feet deep, just rushing downhill, completely away from my house back in there. That is a huge divergence right there. And what I was showing you where that kind of trench was, it runs through here, but where it was really visible, where it dipped down quite a bit over there, Over in here, you can't see any of that whatsoever. And there are lava tubes everywhere out here. So somewhere, maybe 50 or 60 feet back there, that trench goes underground somewhere, and as the water's not running on the surface through here. But then if I walk just a little bit further over here, it pops back up. Hard to see back in there, but in there it'll come back up and start running again for quite a ways. And then here I am now going to start walking up about 2 more feet of elevation from where I'm standing, which is part of my driveway. And then over there, where my finger is pointing to right there, is 4 feet lower than where I'm standing. And again, that water can be racing through there on a downpour, where it won't be racing up here. You know, it falls off this direction, and all that water peels off away from the house. That's important. So the most rain I ever have seen fall down right here where I'm located was a massive storm. It was the remnants of a hurricane, dropped 52 inches of rain right here. And this spot right here was where I saw only a little bit of water gathering. It maybe got 3-4 inches deep right here, quickly peeled off that way, so it never got deeper than that with 52 inches of rain, which that's pretty impressive. And that came down, I believe, within 48 hours, so it was like non-stop. But back in there was like a river, you know, heading towards the ocean, of course. And the worst I had around my structure was about, you know, 3-4 inches deep. And the minute it stopped raining, this disappeared quick. And of course, even back there, once it stopped raining, it stopped flowing real quick. I mean, that water, when it has the path of least resistance to the ocean, it gets moving pretty quick. And I took a lot of the same considerations where I put the bungalow right there. You know, it's on the high point of this piece of ground here, and from the front of there to down there, 4 feet probably difference of elevation. So again, when it's just pouring rain there, the water's going down this way, and then it quickly finds a trench that diverts it way out that way, again away from my main house. And then on the north side of the property, or the north side of the shop there, it does the same thing. You know, this is a nice level piece of ground. It slowly tapers off this way and slowly tapers off that way. And on the other side, same thing, away. So no matter what kind of storm I get, even one of those just unbelievable downpours, right around here never ponds up. Everything goes away from where you build. And out here, that's extremely important, as to wherever you put your structure. So let's go out and take a look at a piece of raw land. All right, so now I'm out on a typical road out here in this subdivision. And here's a piece of raw land right here. This has been untouched forever. Nobody's ever lived there. And the ocean is that direction. So we know that the entire slope of that property is going slightly downhill. To what degree, you would never know until you got in there and started clearing this out and get back in there. But if you look back and see all of the trees back in here. You know, it gives you a good indication that, you know, the elevation is not dropping dramatically just by the size of the trees. All look the same. Where some pieces of raw land out here, you can look out there and you won't see a bunch of trees, and sometimes that's indicative of the land dropping off much quicker. So again, this piece of raw land right here, you know, you come out, you look at it, you really don't know what's back there several hundred feet, and these lots go, you know, many hundreds of feet back. So, you know, maybe here closer to the road, which would be the higher elevation, you know, you might want to be thinking about in there, but a lot of it you won't know till you really start getting back in there. And you can see, you know, you're not walking back through there. And then if I look way back in there, I can see, oh, a good 200-300 feet back in there. It might not show up on the camera real good, but there's kind of an open space back in there, and I see a little different type of vegetation growing up, a different kind of a tree back in there. Could be a low spot back in there. And again, just off a road, here's another parcel. Very, very hard to tell exactly what the terrain is, although we can assume that it has a slight downhill run, because all the properties out here do in general. Now, when you go another mile back in there and look at properties that way, you know, they're further downhill, so you have to be really aware of low spots. There have been people that have built in low spots without taking into consideration how much it does rain out here, and their homes have been washed off their foundations. You know, real flood prone areas. I mean, it's just very, very hard assessing from the road what you're going to get involved in once you start getting back in there. And once you do get in there, you might have to build up a pad to make sure your house is above where all the water's coming from downhill. So now when I was in the Colorado mountains, it was much the same way. That little cabin I showed you guys, you know, I put the front of the cabin facing south, which was extremely important in that terrain, to make sure I caught solar, because the difference between being on a north slope and a south slope in that part of the country was being able to live on solar and not. If you had north facing property, solar was not doable. So where my cabin was, you know, the very front of it faced south, the back of it behind went downhill very quickly to the north. And the snowpack behind there could still be settled in as late as May, where in the front of the house it could melt off during winter. So you really want to make sure that, you know, further north you are, that you want that southern exposure. Now, the roof of the bungalow is facing the north. So some of you have asked me, why don't I just slap some panels on up there? Now out here, I could get away with that, except for the trees, you know, that I've got in front would come into play quite a bit. And that's why I went ahead and did ground mounted array out there. Again, with a more southerly exposure. And right there, I mean, out here at this place in the world, you know, I could get away with that if I had a little more tree clearing, but still, even at this latitude, a southern exposure is better, but it's not quite as critical as it was in the Colorado mountains. So I stay pretty high and dry right here. Like I said, in super heavy rains, I might get a little puddle right in here, as you can kind of see, and especially since I've been driving my vehicle over here back and forth while it's been very wet and saturated. You know, I rub a spot there, but that's about as bad as it gets, because the rest of it, where the water really starts to gather, goes away from the place. So yeah, even in the Colorado mountains where I situated the cabin, the water ran away from the cabin in all directions except for on my east side of the structure. I had a slight hill coming down towards the cabin, but I had trenched some areas away from the cabin before, like if the water was racing down from there, it would quickly divert it off to the north to where the same thing. You know, we could get like a little monsoon there, and it might drop 3 inches of rain in a heavy rainstorm, which was unusual, but in such a dry area, that water could get really moving downhill fast. And again, I had, you know, a perfect location to where the water always ran away from the structure. So that's really super important, especially, you know, when you just head out into the boonies. Be thinking about that and be, you know, looking like, where are you building? Where's the high part of your land? Where's the low part? And even there too, you know, I saw a lot of people building on the north slopes. Made for a very, very long winter there on the north slopes, very long, where the difference of having a southern exposed slope at 8,300 feet was all the difference in the world. Out here, it's not like that, as far as, you know, I'm not at that kind of elevation or latitude. So, you know, you can get away with a little bit more with where you put your solar out here and your structure. But you out here, you have to take into consideration the rain, and do not build on a low spot. People that have done that out here find themselves in trouble real quick. And a lot of the people that come out here and have never spent any time out here don't realize that when they first come in. It's not something you want to find out after the storm hits. So yeah, the difference of a foot or two out here in elevation is dramatic. So, you know, if you might have to, like I said, build your house pad up, bring some material in, or depending on how far and deep you go in, you might have some churned up lava, which you will, to go ahead and make a house pad. And make sure your house is sitting on the highest part of your ground. I see a fair amount of people get into trouble that way out here. So it can rain. Yeah, I'd have to say those are my two biggest considerations when you go to buy raw land wherever you live, in the northern hemisphere especially, and you want to live on solar. In general, you're going to need a good southern exposure to set up your solar array, and that can be quite a ways from your house. So even if your house isn't, you know, it might be tucked away in the trees a little bit, but you can move your panels out to where they have a good southern exposure for year-round catching of sunshine when it's available, and power up your systems. That's good. And then always be thinking about what the weather might bring. And you really want to make sure that the water is always going away from your structure. Those two things, definitely the most important in 30 years of living off grid. That I'm glad I took those into consideration. I've had no problems here, and this place can dump on you much more. Now, the mountains could dump feet and feet of snow, and it was the same thing. When it started melting, you were a lot better in a southern exposure. It could get off, and you could get in and out easier. And the people that lived on north slopes, sometimes their homes would be inaccessible throughout the winter. So, you know, that's my 2 cents on buying raw land wherever you live. Take into consideration really closely where you're going to put that structure. And it takes a while to get the lay of the land. So if you're not sure, spend more time out there, especially during some inclement weather. and see what it's going to throw at you, and make some adjustments before you are set in stone about where you're going to be. All right, guys. Aloha. Catch you on the next one.